We have quite a few people joining us. Let's get started. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, from whichever part you are joining in. Welcome to this webinar on QA Team's playbook for improving test coverage. Let me quickly give a quick introduction about myself. I'm a QA manager at BrowserStack. I have around 10 years of experience. I have worked in mostly in the startups. I've uh, I've tried to build out automation frameworks, CDCI pipeline, and also improving the quality for our products. We have Anis from easyJet with us today. Anis, could you also introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Arpit. Hello, all. My name is Anis Fatima, and I started off as an automation engineer about 14 years ago and have been predominantly involved in automation testing and test automation over the years, building frameworks and such. And I have more recently worked as a quality engineering architect for about 6 years now, more than that, and then in many different organizations. And I've seen different flavors of this particular role, and I've enjoyed each one of those. In my current role as lead quality engineering architect, in easyJet, I take care of practices such as automation, architecture, and environment. I have my team comprises of environment SMEs and automation SMEs and QA architects. We all take care of things such as optimizations around test automation, AI tooling, environment usage, and standardizations, and so on. And I would like to thank BrowserStack for this opportunity today. Looking forward to this session with good knowledge sharing.
Yep. Thank you, Anis, for the great introduction. I'm sure audience will learn a lot from your experience as well. So before we get started, a couple of housekeeping items. This session will run for 60 minutes and this session will be recorded. The recording will be made available for everyone once the webinar is over. All the participants will be on mute. So we encourage you guys to post out any queries that you have in the Zoom Q&A section, and we will answer that at the end of our today's call live. Yep, cool. Let me walk you through the agenda item for today. So we would like to discuss the importance of measuring test coverage itself. We might dig in a little bit deeper onto that. And we would also try to understand, is functional testing enough for achieving optimal test coverage? Or do we think or go beyond that, right? And yeah. And later we will also talk about how do we improve the overall how is easyJet improving the overall test experience with by leveraging BrowserStack platform. Yeah, and at the end we will have a live Q&A section. Yep. All right. So before we begin, a couple of poll questions that we want to cover out. There would be a Zoom poll Zoom poll question popping up on your screen. So we would like to understand from our audience how mature your test setup is. And yeah, so please respond to that. Oh, okay, awesome. I see a very uh, heavy side on manual and automation beginner on the poll questionnaire. So yeah, moving on towards that, moving on to the second poll. We have we also wanted to understand, like, how do you currently measure the test coverage as well? So there will be another poll that will pop up on your screen. So we would like you to answer that. Yep. Thank you for answering the poll. I see a lot of people mentioning that we do we do use requirement or user story covered by testing part, and there are mix of percentage code coverage, combinations of multiple practice, and some active. Some few have mentioned that we don't have active measurement as well, right? Anis, do you want to add out anything, or do you want to share how briefly how do we do at easyJet?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Arpit. Within easyJet, we again have like a mixed bag in terms of like maturity with which we measure our test coverage. In some areas, we are more mature, in others, we are not. So there are areas within easyJet where we are measuring test coverage in terms of unit, component, and integrated tests. And any in-house development that we do, we also ensure that we do this consistently across the board so that we have that view of how much coverage we're trying to achieve at each level through the development life cycle. And we have enabled measurement of test coverage by adding relevant tags, such as in our test management tool as well. We've added tags such as functional, non-functional tests. We've added tags like user experience UAT tests, so that we ensure that we are covering with all the different requirements, both functional as well as non-functional side of things. It's pretty easy when you have those taggings and labels available, so that you can filter, you can execute the tests which you need to, and pull in reports as and when needed and things like that. So
Yep. Thank you, Anish, for sharing that insight as well. Yeah, I do believe like measuring test coverage is an important part of QA process, right?
yeah.
So I would also like to understand a little bit about that as well. Like, what does test coverage mean to you, and why is it critical within our modern software development lifecycle?
Sure, thank you. Test coverage, in my view, is an indication of the level of coverage we have on the defined requirements, how much coverage we have with respect to our tests on the defined requirements that we have for a given product or application. I recently read in an article as well that within Agile, test coverage is a measure of how well your tests verify the functionality and quality of your software. So what is important to note here is that it's not just about the functionality of your software, but also about the quality. So how do you achieve a holistic quality? You try and meet the functional as well as non-functional requirements for a given product, and you give as much importance to the non-functionals as you give to your functional testing. In some of the digital transformation programs within easyJet, the measurement of test coverage, like I said, it plays a very important role because we want to be able to follow the principle of test pyramid and want to ensure that most of our tests are at the unit and component level, and then at the end-to-end testing level or the system testing level, we only do exploratory tests. And there is, of course, an automated regression pack that we can execute across the board for any new releases or any defective testing that we do. We want to be able to ensure that there is enough automation at each level for us to be able to do that execution flawlessly. So, yeah.
Yep. Thank you for sharing your thoughts about that. I do believe like having a good test coverage, right? It's essential for our product, and we ensure that by having it on place, that we will deliver a good quality product as well, right?
Yeah.
So, yep. And I think audience also mentioned out that there are they have like mixed setup of automation, and then they have some manual, some automation
Yeah.
part as well, right? So, yeah, uh, maybe moving on to the next part, I wanted to check out is can you share some strategy or any specific QA strategy that you have applied for improving this test coverage, right?
Yeah.
Moving the needle from 0 to 1, something like that.
Sure. So one of the strategies that I would want to apply, like wherever I have worked as a quality engineering architect, is that you need to ensure that your requirements are well defined. Only then you'll be able to establish that traceability between your tests and requirements. If the requirements are not well defined, you might have gaps later on in your development life cycle, and then you will eventually realize that your user stories might not have been well defined or whatever not. You also need to ensure that there is more agility in the ways of working. If you are working in more traditional ways of working, then you might have those gaps, which you will eventually have because of the process that is in place rather than, anything else, rather than people or technology or whatever you're working with. You also need to establish traceability between your requirement, your tests, and your defects. Most of the test management tools provide this, but then it is about how efficiently you put that in place, how efficiently you configure it. You have to, have labels and tags that you can use to define what tests those are, what type of tests, what functionality they cover, and all of that, so that you can trace back the defect to your test, to your requirements at the end. And you could also label them, with different levels of or types of tests, for example, be it functional or non-functional or anything. And yeah, you need to measure your test coverage basically consistently using those tools to be able to get any benefit out of it. We also use BrowserStack in a lot of our business areas, be it enterprise and employee tech or operations core, any of the digital transformation work that we do and the digital platforms and channels that we have. And we ensure that we have a test coverage in terms of, browsers, the browser versions, operating systems, devices, etc. by using the compatibility testing features that BrowserStack provides us. So I think a combination of all of this is what I would ensure.
Got it. Got it. Thank you for answering that. I think the first part you mentioned about the requirements, right? That closely resonates with our audience poll as well, because majority of them mentioned that we do measure the test coverage according to the requirements or the user stories that are covered by test, right? Couple of things you also mentioned about traceability and other things, right? So, is there any best practice that you follow at easyJet to measure out the overall test coverage, or and would you like to share out with audience as well? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, like I said, one thing that we do is ensure that we have that labeling process in place where any test that you write, you provide context to it within your test management tool. If you have options to add more context to your tests, do that. And utilize that for your benefit. If you are wanting to analyze what are the defects that are arising, in what area of your application the defects are arising, for example, what area is more vulnerable, sorry, due to the defects, and what areas you would want to test extensively, right? So and to analyze, to get that insight, I think it is important that you have that labeling in place and be able to use those metrics for your execution and ensuring that the quality is good. I think another thing would be trying to ensure that your requirements are well defined, and if they are not, try and push for it. So in our QE practice, what we try and promote is we are not just testers who are sitting at the end of the development life cycle, and the code is not basically thrown into our bucket just for us to test and ensure that there's nothing wrong with it at that stage, but rather we want to be able to get involved in from the early stage, where we can get involved when the design is happening, when we can get involved when requirements are getting defined, so that we can look at those requirements and say whether these requirements are good enough for us to go into the stage where we are designing our test plan, writing our test strategy and writing our tests and all of that. So I think ensuring quality at every stage in the development life cycle is what is key there.
Yep, yep. Those are some great insight for measuring out the test coverage itself. There's one question popped up on the screen as well from Sunil. I think what he's trying to mention is, let's say if the requirements are changing, right? So what could be our strategy, or how could we tweak the overall strategy, right?
Yeah, sure. That's, I think, one of the most common problems that we
Yeah.
tested, quality engineers face in the industry. What we need to ensure is, before we move on, like I said, before we move on to the next stage where we have started implementing the next stage of things, writing the test plan or writing the test cases, we need to freeze the requirements and say that, this is the requirements that we will take forward and we will do. If there is anything more that is coming up, it should be another user story, for example, right? I understand that we are agile and we want to be able to have, features that are ever evolving, and, we want to be able to ensure that we are delivering at a faster pace and things like that. But what we need to also ensure is, like, if you have defined a particular user story, ensure that that user story starts, getting implemented in terms of, development, as well as you start writing your tests and all of that. But in parallel, if there is any change that comes in, if it's a newer requirement or a change in requirement, again, that gets added as a new user story. I understand that if there's a functionality change that is required within the user story that has been developed, I think there will be that change and we need to be adaptable to that. But then, yeah, I think what we need to also ensure is, we are involved from the beginning of the development life cycle and ensure that we are defining the requirements right, and then we take them forward for testing.
Got it. Got it. Thank you, Anis, for sharing that out. I hope it answers one of our participants' question as well. Yeah, one thing that you mentioned earlier, right, about the measure of how well your test verifies, right, the functionality. So, could you share a little bit about how the role of functional testing plays out in overall increasing the test coverage, right? Are there any limitations around that, or are there any challenges you face?
Yeah. Functional testing, of course, is very extremely important in understanding that, we are building the right kind of features for the product that we are trying to develop. But we also need to ensure that we're building the product right. So that is what ensures that we are, having good quality product at the end. We need to ensure that there is holistic quality in the product. So in order to do that, we cannot solely rely on functional testing. All the NFRs are equally important in ensuring that holistic quality, and then the QA team should go beyond functional testing for us to be able to do tests such as visual tests, UAT tests, cross-browser testing. Sorry, I meant usability testing and cross-browser testing. There's real device testing, performance and security testing. So, for example, if a mobile app is, it's got great features, but it's not well designed, or it's not secure, or it doesn't perform when there is minimal traffic, or when there is high traffic or whatever not, it'll quickly lose its credibility on the market, and that's not what you want for your business, right? So what is important is to ensure that you are giving enough importance to the non-functional areas as well. The challenges could range from undefined or poorly defined requirements, lack of good analytics in terms of, what is the usage of your product itself. Like, if you've not defined your NFR testing strategy properly, or the processes around it, you've not defined very well, I think those could, again, add some challenges to the existing ones. We as QA team should, there's also another challenge that I would like to mention, which is, like, there's not enough buy-in from the business stakeholders in terms of investing into this. So you will need to ensure that you propagate this message of, how important it is, and how these gaps can impact the business. What is the kind of impact non-functional requirements have on a given product or application. So when you try and propagate that message, I think that's when that buy-in comes in from the stakeholders.
Thank you, Anis. I think those resonate with me as well. Solely relying on functional tests, that might not be an optimal strategy as well. We would have to explore out a little bit around different aspects of testing as well, right? So I would also like to know from our audience about what kind of testing aspects that would you follow. So there would be one poll on Zoom that would pop up. So could you spend a minute to answer that as well? Thank you, guys. I think it's great. Like, there is a fine balance between visual testing, accessibility testing, real device, cross-browser performance, and other testings as well, right? Other testing aspects. So now that we have established what test coverage means, what it takes to improve the test coverage, right? Given that there are different testing types and the need for the test coverage as well, right? So how is BrowserStack platform helping easyJet to overall increase the test coverage? We would like to know about that as
Sure, Arpit. So like I said, we have a mixed bag in terms of manual and automated testing that we do. Of course, you cannot automate everything. So what the kind of principle that we have is automate the right things. We do use live app live automate and app automate for us to be able to ensure that we have good test coverage in terms of the browsers and browser versions, operating system devices, and the versions of devices, etc. So we want to be able to increase test coverage for web apps and mobile apps. We do not have extensive mobile apps as such, but then whatever we have, we want to ensure that we are compliant in terms of the expectations of the market or otherwise. And yeah, across different business areas, we try and ensure that this test coverage is there. And like I said, automate all the right things and cover all the test scenarios with a mix of manual and automated testing using all of these different features that BrowserStack provides. I think we are using it extensively to ensure our test coverage.
thank you, Anish, for sharing about what all products do you use and how do you optimize the real device testing, the cross-browser, and your automation test infrastructure as well, right? I do hope that we are serving your needs. And basically, if you have any feedback, we can take that as well, right? And improve our product as well. Yeah, moving on. Let me add some more context on why BrowserStack platform, right? So basically, given our customers, right, most of them are developers and testers, right? So we want to enable them for scaling, expanding, empowering, and basically providing real-time insights with one single connected testing tool. So that would ensure that we provide a comprehensive solution, right? And given the fact that we have established that testing coverage is a key to building confidence, right, in product quality. So we are also exploring out a couple of other areas of products that we want to build out and offer our users as well. So given the fact that there are various types of testing, right? Functional testing, cross-browser, real device, and all of those, right? So we want to enable our users to utilize our platform and basically to avoid any defect release that happens, right? So this comprehensive approach that we want to build out will boost the confidence in basically in achieving high quality software, right? That meets the demand of our users. So that's a little bit context about why BrowserStack platform and what we are trying to achieve, right? So I also gathered from our sales team that easyJet is also trying to evaluate some of our new products, right, to boost the test coverage. So can you please talk about that as well? Which products you are exploring out? What are the key takeaways?
Sure. So we are exploring, products such as accessibility testing product, which is recently we received like a demo from BrowserStack on how we can leverage it to put in place some governance around, the accessibility testing that is done by our supplier partners. So we predominantly have supplier partners who do this for us for the end user facing applications that we have and the mobile apps that we have. So we want to be able to ensure that they are doing the right kind of tests that are needed to be done, and they're ensuring that right level of accessibility is in place for all of those applications. So we want to put in place some governance around the testing practices that they have, as well as the test evidences that they produce. So I'm just trying to explore what we can do with BrowserStack's accessibility testing product. Another thing that we're exploring is test management again. What I'm trying to ensure is we do a comparison of the existing tools that we have that we use with BrowserStack's test management, and then ensure ensure that we can consolidate, because the BrowserStack provides a tool suite, and we want to be able to have one single place to manage all of those different tools. So yeah, I think that will be useful for us. So I'm trying to explore how it can help us achieve that. Also, something else that we're exploring is test observability product. So test observability, again, we're trying to explore how we can make the failure analysis process efficient. For example, if there is a test suite that we run a couple of times in a day, we are spending a lot of time doing the failure analysis manually, wherein we go into each of the failures and try and analyze whether it's application failure, technical failure, or failure with respect to the scripts or configuration of the environment and things like that. So BrowserStack test observability feature actually provides us an insight, collecting all the data and collecting all the error codes and error details, and provides us a detail about what category this particular error belongs to, so that we can consolidate and be able to fix one defect and one failure, for example, and one issue, and the many failures that are associated with it can also be addressed at the same time. So I think that will save us time that we're trying to explore further. And another one that we're exploring is the AI-based test case generation, providing the requirements document of the user stories, and the AI helper actually provides us the list of test scenarios that can be written for that. So I think that's also going to be very useful for us to save us time and effort. So yeah, these are some of the products that we're exploring currently.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I think those are few key products that we are also trying to build out for our customers. So I do believe like test management is the first point that everyone should start. That's where we try to capture what kind of requirements has what kind of test coverage, test cases, overall, what kind of um, aspects that we want to cover, right? Different types of aspects, functional, we list all of them down. It provides a great insight about what we have covered, how we monitor them, what kind of test runs it has, and all of those, right? And also earlier you mentioned about a couple of products, right? Live, app live. So that goes hand in hand as a next step. And it also you mentioned like BrowserStack accessibility, right? So that is more essential for WCAG compliant customers. And moving on to like app automate, right? So those get tied up with test observability, providing you efficient way to analyze your automation related failures, analysis around that, what kind of failures and which area you might have to focus on, right? Yeah. Yep. So also I would like to share with our audiences about the BrowserStack test platform. So over the years, we have established leadership in web and mobile testing space, right? With over 50,000 customers using our platform across 135 different countries, right? So our mission is to empower testers, developers to build an amazing experience. So to fulfill that, we want to build out one extensive testing tool chain that can help you cover all the use cases and capabilities, right? So as a part of that, as a part of our roadmap, we are trying to build out the most comprehensive test platform, and it is easy to use, is well connected with each other, and they are open to use as well, right? Most of you might know about the middle layer, as we have tried to solve many problems around those. Those are like the core functionality that every single customers would have, right? Mobile, web, API testing, right? So we are also building our new offerings within the shared platform services that introduces AI ML kind of services, and basically that enables user to write test case generation as well, and also low code automation as well. And yeah, so our goal with this testing platform, right, is to offer a simplified tool chain, right, that is easy to set up, pre-integrated out of the box, helps you reduce the overall cost of ownership, right? And basically having this single tool chain. It can help you drive standardization, consistency, and best practices within your organizations as well. Yeah, so that's about what we do, what we are trying to achieve from our mission and vision. So AI is a buzzword these days. So I would also like to understand, right, where or what kind of use cases where we can apply the AI, right, to improve the overall testing coverage. So any thoughts or anything you would like to add, Anis?
Yeah, sure. But the AI is quite the buzzword even within easyJet. So we want to be able to be innovative in the way we do our testing and the way we develop our products, for example. So in my view, AI can help us in generating the test cases by taking in like requirements or user stories, anything that we've defined well, it should be able to take up and whether it's functional requirements or non-functional requirements, give us some scenarios in which we can then try and contextualize them or enrich them better and things like that. But it can be like an assistant that the testers can use to generate those tests. It could also assist the QA teams to categorize the tests by labeling them, for example, for ensuring that we have enough traceability, we have enough test coverage. In any test management tool, currently we do it manually. So I think if there's a way to do that through AI, I think that would be good. It could also analyze and the written test cases and the requirements and provide a gap analysis of where there is gap in terms of the test coverage, and maybe provide that analytics in terms of for us to be able to understand and bridge that gap wherever there is. AI can also help us with any usage analysis, for example, the data analytics around what are the types of devices, browsers, and operating systems our end users are using to access our applications and the products. I think that could help us in ensuring there's better test coverage in those areas, whatever the AI tool highlights. So I think yeah, some of these use cases maybe.
Yeah, these are some of the great pointers where we can apply the AI part. I think one of the most interesting is about the test labeling part, right? As in when our application starts to grow, our test case size would also grow out, right? And it would be difficult to manage out overall via labeling around different kinds of area that are interconnected as well, right? So I think those are some really great applications that we could apply the AI for. And I think BrowserStack is also building out certain capabilities that would enable you to have a efficient case generation within our test management tool. And also we are trying to build out the self-healing part on the automated test as well, so that if there are any flaky tests or if there are any minor update that happens to your test, right? Minor update on UI, on the layout level. So we can just enable that, and that would help you fix out all the test cases within your automation cycle as well, right? Yeah. So I think great. Let's move on to our Q&A section. I think that's all I had around test coverage and how do we increase that, right? There is one specific question around AI itself, right? So I think Mahesh would like to understand, like, let's say if there is a AI-based application, right, and then there is a traditional application. So how do we evolve our strategy around increasing the test coverage, right? Anish, would you like to take this?
Sure. Just to understand the question better, it is for an AI-based application, how do you ensure that there is better test coverage? Yeah, I think in terms of the test strategy itself, for any AI-based solution, that it cannot be a very traditional test strategy. It has to be innovative in terms of trying to understand what is the data that is going into this AI or ML product that is there, and how it is basically processing that information and what is the kind of result that we're expecting, right? So to test any of these AI models or AI products, what is essential is to ensure that your data quality that is going into the product is what is of the good quality. The data should be of the good quality. So test coverage, you will probably need to ensure that there is enough data coverage. You have different types of data that the model can handle. You have different flavors of that data, different sources maybe, or you will need to understand what kind of scenarios that you want to be able to test. I think based on that, you will need to ensure that your data that you're inputting into the models is good enough for you to be able to test that out. I think I would probably ensure that we're focusing more on the data side for us to be able to ensure that there is enough test coverage.
Yep. I think one of the biggest challenge I think would be on the test data part itself, right?
Yeah.
Different kinds of test data or what kind of test data persona that application has, right? So we would have to build out that and basically devise our strategy around covering those aspects, right? So yeah, that's great. Another question is around could you test base with the testing pyramid, right? So yeah, I think most of you are familiar with the testing pyramid where unit test lies at the bottom that has a heavy coverage side. Then moving on to integration part, right, where we do AI-based test, API-based testing, right, and then we move to end-to-end side, right. So end-to-end side bucket is smaller overall as compared to integration or unit test, but that is what the actual end users are experiencing, right? So it is essential for us to build out the workflow level, functionality level testing, and also think about like what are the visual aspects, right? The user experience that your users are getting it, and also think about uh, basically how do you optimize that overall within your automation cycle as well, right? Where you can apply visual testing, where you can apply a traditional automation testing as well, right? Yeah. Yeah, so there is one specific question about easyJet. Anis, would you like to answer that? That is more around how easyJet is different from Azure DevOps test capability.
Sorry, how easyJet is different?
Yeah, how easyJet is different from Azure DevOps test capabilities.
Okay. I'm not sure I understand it correctly, but then I'll try and answer it.
Yeah.
So yeah, we do have some amount of DevOps configuration in place wherein we do continuous testing, but it's not as mature in all the different business areas. I think we do understand that it is important, but then yeah, again, we have very SaaS heavy applications wherein we have these systems which are a combination of different SaaS components. And then there are internal components that are then integrated into this whole system. So it is not very easy in those cases for us to be able to influence the testing process of the SaaS product itself, or to have an influence on the entire process of this development life cycle, because it's all more integration than a greenhouse development, greenfield development, sorry, in-house greenfield development. So yeah, in those cases, having CI/CD in place is not very useful. It is just at the end we're trying to do the testing in integration of all of these different components. But then what we want to try and ensure is we have a basic CI/CD setup in place where we are able to execute the automated tests, whatever we've automated for all of these kind of SaaS-based applications. I think what is important is to ensure that you have good test coverage and test automation coverage for you to be able to, put in place that DevOps mindset.
Yep. And there are a couple of questions around how do you label out overall your test cases, right? How do you organize them in a better way? And what are the key metrics that you follow for test coverage, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So with respect to labeling, I think it's a matter of how well you follow the process that you put in place. Define your process really well in terms of what are the kinds of categorizations you want to be able to have. And I think it's pretty simple to configure these labels, and you should be able to configure them in terms of whether it is a feature that you want as a label, or you want type of test as a label. Or maybe you want to ensure that it is a functional test or non-functional test, or you want to be able to add a label around smoke regression, or sanity pack, for example. So there are different ways you can label them. Just it's a matter of ensuring that all the different QA engineers who participate in this activity have that clarity among themselves, and then they follow it correctly. And I think it should be simpler than to just pull out the set of tests that you want to execute for a given feature, or for a given type of test that you want to run.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, and thank you for that. Yep, and there are a couple of other questions around what kind of tooling you can use and all of those. So I would take that question up. I think you can try out our test management tool itself. So that would give a better insights about what kind of labeling you can apply, what kind of matrix you can track, and we have a pretty useful feature that we have built out that is called as dashboard itself. So uh, pre it gives you a predefined matrix that you can analyze, and you can optimize your testing strategy around those as well. Yeah. Yep. And there is one more question around, like, let's say if there are no concrete requirement, right? The requirement keeps on changing, and we are, I think, in the early stage of our product release, right? So what kind of strategy we can tweak around for getting basically how do we approach around those part as well?
Mm-hmm. Okay, when you're in the early stage, the requirements keep changing, and how do you handle that? Is that the question of it? Okay.
Yeah, I believe that's the question. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, so I think what is important is having those three amigo sessions. I think have your BAs, QAs, and your developers sit in sessions where they can discuss the user stories of the requirements and break them down into user stories, and then break them down to tasks and things like that, instead of trying and going in back and forth in terms of trying to understand what is the requirement and then to change it at a later stage. What is needed is a collective understanding from the cross-functional team. I think the product owners need to define those requirements initially, and then they need to have that discussion in three amigo sessions for them to be able to have, to be on the same page with all the different cross-functional team members. I think that is key.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you for answering that as well. Hope that answers our participants' question as well. Yeah, I think there is one around uh, like folks are trying to build out their best practice for product development, right? And their requirement also keeps on changing, and they are not fixed. I believe we have already answered this. So moving on to the next one. Yep. There is another question. Which automation framework do you guys recommend as the most versatile in regards of mobile testing? Anything you would like to add, Anis, on this?
I have used Appium in the past, and I've found that it is pretty useful and pretty comprehensive. There's also Cypress for web apps, but not for the mobile apps as such, like the hybrid or native apps. And yeah, I think Playwright does support mobile testing, or the mobile test automation. It's at the end, it is about a choice that you need to make based on what is the kind of requirement you have, for example, and be able to understand what kind of tests you want to run, and try and compare the tools that are available or the frameworks that are available in the market, and see what has more pros versus cons for your need.
Yep. Thank you, Anis, for answering that as well. I believe like we are done with all of our Q&As. So I think we can close out. I think there is one more. Like which framework should we go for data-driven? And how is parallel testing carried out on product that uses credentials? Yeah, I think we can take this one. So how is parallel testing carried out on products that use user credentials and MFA? Typically, when you run multiple tests in parallel, right? So then it uses one single account, and there is a MFA tied to that. So I can take this answer. Maybe if there are any specific constraints around creating a dummy accounts via your backend process itself, maybe creating out a webhook that can help you create uh, test user on the fly. So I think that would solve out this problem. If you still have some restrictions around covering this part out, right? So I would advise you to basically segregate your user based on the feature that is touching your product, right? So maybe like one flow is on dashboard level, another flow is on profile level, right? So you can try to categorize those modules and try to execute them in parallel so that it doesn't impact your user flow using one single user account. So that is an alternative strategy for this as well.
Yeah, one thing that is recommended generally in such cases is also the programmatic login. Maybe you can explore how to set that up for your framework.
Yep, yep. Yep. Cool. I think we have almost answered every questions. Yeah. And again, thank you all for joining in. Hope this session was insightful, and we are looking forward to you at the next event. And thank you, Anis. Thank you, Anis, for
Thank you.
joining us as well.
Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you, everybody.